standard. But really, applying for heavy industrial was the only option we had because light industrial doesn't allow for crane terminals now.
I know.
I guess this is not one very well.
That's crazy.
Any check-ins, Carrie?
Very slow to respond today.
Doesn't like the cold either.
Apparently not.
Slow those electrons way down.
What's the deal here? There we go. For those that are logged in on Zoom, we are just waiting for one more commissioner to arrive. It'll be just a few more minutes.
Got it. Thank you. You almost done. Are they done with the roof or they got something yet to do?
What's that?
Are they done with the roof?
Not quite. The roofing crew had a bout of the stomach flu going around last week, and so they were all sick. And then, with the wind, they weren't here yesterday, so they're just 2-3 days from being done. If they could get just a few good days.
That's the crew that did Akeley Science Center a month and a half ago. Yeah, Sarah baked them lunch goodies
Maybe
twice.
that's what got them sick.
Yeah, it could be.
All Sarah's fault.
Yeah. Particularly slow acting
Yeah.
bacteria.
Lacking ingredients.
Sorry, I'm late. Is everybody ready?
Yeah, it's okay.
I'll call the meeting to order. Start with pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mochler. Packard's absent. Smith. Here. Manning.
Here.
Hammond.
Here.
Approve agenda.
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Should we do a conflict of interest?
Oh, sorry.
It's
I don't have it up yet.
It's okay.
Any conflict of interest? Hearing none. Approve agenda.
We did that.
Done with that?
Or I mean, minutes,
Minutes.
sorry.
I have a couple of changes.
Okay.
Oh, well, you should move and,
Okay.
move and
Move to approve.
a second. But I'd like to ask for just a couple of very small changes. And they seem insignificant, but so one is, under the discussion about the car, I didn't state that visibility matters. I asked, and there is a difference there. So I'll just ask you to change that one word to asked. Let's see. And then the other part that wasn't in there that I thought people might really care about was that the commission, we agreed that the proposed work to be done be sent to, I think it was Bailey was the name of the group. Bailey for their professional opinion on what parts of the project could be funded with federal infrastructure money. Otherwise, it sort of looks like we didn't do anything, and I think we did.
Move to approve with such amendments.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Okay. Now we're to the rezone. How'd last night go?
Myron, in the end. There has been a deal reached by city council. I have heard about. Nobody on the county was part of it. Were you at this meeting?
No, I wasn't at the meeting,
Yeah.
but I like you, I heard an accounting of it afterwards.
I heard most of it at the city council meeting. A deal has been reached. The city denied it.
Microphone, please.
The city council has made a recommendation to its staff to move grain elevator to something in light industrial, either permitted or conditional. I don't know. We don't know what that deal is yet. I haven't seen anything in writing. But they moved to deny it last night with that idea in mind. for us, there's a kind of a quirk in joint jurisdiction zoning rules. If we approve this today, he can apply again as soon as those changes are made. He doesn't have to wait the 6 months. Yeah, so the city has moved a long way from where they were at 3 months ago. And I think credit to Kelsey Collier that a lot of this moved where it wasn't moving before. Even this reapplication thing changed yesterday from where the city had been interpreting it. So we have seen a lot of movement there. Wish we could have had that a little sooner. And I wish we would have been involved on some level.
Did they say anything when you asked them to approve it, just so we could be in the same room?
No, didn't even discuss it. Second time I've asked for a joint meeting and we have not gotten it. So a lot of frustrating, but frustration aside, there has been progress. So like I say, I've got to find out from somebody on the city side how we're gonna go about these changes and what the specifics actually are.
Yeah, so I also attended the meeting last night and, wanted first to thank Drew for the really clear, concise, incisive analysis that he did for this meeting. And like Drew, I was really impressed. The city attorney said that, they would be willing to act expeditiously on adding, grain elevators and agribusiness to light industrial. And like Drew, I came away a little confused as to whether they were permitted uses or, subject to conditional use permits. So that's something I think we might want to discuss with the city. For joint jurisdiction. But, it was very clear. Every single council member was very clear that there would never be a heavy industrial zone there. And, when you look at the definition of heavy industrial, really it's much more. I mean, the word that they use is a nuisance. It's a nuisance industry. Yours is not a nuisance industry. I mean, that's very clear. Your neighbors love you. There are people who came, like a lot of people from Bliss Point and Constance Avenue. They came to say that they support these guys, and that they want them to be able to continue their business, to be able to expand their business. They have no issues with that. So, I think, the heavy industrial is sort of a dead letter. If we have to vote on it, we have to vote on it. But, and I would leave that to the state's attorney to figure out whether or you could even withdraw the application. But the city attorney also gave the opinion that, because application for light industrial was different from this request, that they wouldn't have to wait the 6 months. The city council unanimously vehemently denied. And when you read the language, you can see why. Because even though we completely trust the Myrons, who have been here for 50 years and have run their business really honorably, and they've worked hard, and they've worked with the neighbors and they've been good neighbors, zoning is for everyone. And if somebody else for some reason had that property and it was heavy industrial, that they could put in something that would really be noxious. So, and it very specifically says in heavy industrial that you don't put it next to residential. And, we have abutting residential properties. So I think the clearest way to go is, I don't know, maybe we send somebody to meet with the city council so we don't have to, or maybe, maybe Travis, you call you call Kelsey and say, look, we need to have a joint meeting to iron this out. And we iron it out together and we and we do it fast. I think John Prescott at the meeting estimated it could be done in 4 to 6 weeks if we all work hard and, get those notices in the newspaper and so on. So, I mean, this is a case where I think, it's sort of a happy ending. You'll be happy, the neighbors will be happy, the city will be happy, we'll be happy. It's kind of a win-win all around. So, but we will have to change, what's included in light industrial, as well as do the zoning change, and we'll have to do those in sequence. So that's why it'll be 4 to 6 weeks instead of just a few weeks. Does that make sense to you, Drew?
Yep.
It was not a contentious meeting. I mean, it was not difficult.
So what's your recommendation at this moment then?
My recommendation would be to approve what we have in front of us, as it is following the zoning ordinance. And that also doesn't, if we denied it, I think that would cause other problems.
What other problems do you think it would cause?
With the reapplication, there's a second bit of language in there where both boards have to approve or deny.
We included that.
But I think that's the same language that the city attorney said, basically would not. This is exactly the same language that the city attorney said would not apply. And what's different about the county?
And then Prescott brought up the third line from the bottom, same as that, which has been denied by the Board of County Commissioners and City Council. So if we both deny it, then that part could kick in for reapplication.
Yeah, so I think it puts commissioners in a very, if that's true, and I would really like to hear Alexis's opinion on that, because I think her opinion would be very important. But if that's true, that puts commissioners in a terrible situation, because we wind up voting for something that clearly is not in the best interests of the public. And when you read that, I mean, that definition of heavy industrial is really sobering. And it very specifically says that it's a nuisance industry that should not be put in residential or commercial or business areas. So that puts us in a terrible, terrible position. And I don't know if Alexis is available, but if she's not, I would, I would actually move to table, to a time when we can get that opinion. I mean, alternatively, I suppose we could decide among ourselves that just enough people will vote for it to let it pass. But I just, it's hard for me to believe that. Oh, yes, you heard your name. You heard your name. So we are looking at a section of the zoning code, the section on reapplication. Because to get you up to date, the city has reached an agreement with the Myrons that seems quick, easy, and the commission, the council reached consensus on it, and it is that heavy industrial, they voted unanimously no last night. Not surprising, given the but reapplication, it says no application requesting a zoning district classification change in any property whose application includes any such property either entirely or substantially the same as that which has been denied by the Board of County Commissioners and City Council shall be again considered by the planning commissions before the expiration of 6 months from the date of final action of the Board of County Commissioners and the City Council. So the question that Drew rightfully brings up is, if both organizations deny, do they then have to wait 6 months, or is an application for light industrial substantially different from an application for heavy industrial? And I would argue that it is.
I have one question here, though. Okay, so you haven't seen anything in writing, you or you guys, that even talking about switching this to light industry.
No.
You've just got what they said last night.
Yeah, if I can kind of jump in here.
Yeah.
Through numerous conversations last week, and one that started with Steve Ward. We had a long conversation about what was going on and how can we fix this. And of course, part of our problem is we're upset. We believe that the zoning was changed improperly to begin with. We thought that was the starting point, but okay, we're trying to move forward, trying to figure out solutions. Now, the reason we applied for the heavy industrial is because that is the only category that allows for grain elevators. Now, what I don't understand is if grain elevators is never going to be allowed under heavy industrial, why were we put there? We've been the only grain elevator in existence since 2004, or excuse me, 2003. We are the only grain elevator in the joint jurisdictional area. We're the only grain elevator in Vermillion city limits, and we got dropped into a category that we're never going to be allowed to be in. I don't understand that. And the only reason why we're pushing still for the heavy industrial is because that's the only solution that fixes our problem immediately. Now, maybe if the error is recognized and okay, this was done in error, let's fix it and fix it immediately. I don't know all the ins and outs of that. So that would be the quickest solution. The next quickest up to us was give us this zoning, which is the only zoning that allows grain elevators. And then we will gladly, and I said, we'll public state it, we'll put it in writing. The second things are changed to allow us to go to light industrial, we'll make that request. I'll put it in writing. I'll say it publicly. That to us was our next quickest resolution. And it's the only one that meets the guidelines that what the category that grain elevators are in. But the next solution was really what we wanted all along, was to be back to the way that we were when we purchased the facility, the way we were prior to the joint jurisdictional agreement. And that was we were light industrial.
Yeah.
So, in talking to Steve, he said, well, yeah, I talked to city staff and they're maybe open to this. Present to us what you want, So that's what I did. I wrote a very lengthy letter, and then I did an additional one that was a summary that basically laid out those steps. Add agribusiness and grain terminal. Now, in the county's zoning for light industrial, because if we could revert back to what the county's is, we would be fine. They allow for agribusiness, and I believe in your guys' interpretation, grain terminal fell under that. It was part of the whole joint jurisdictional agreement. A new business use got added, grain terminal, grain processing. So now that that's in there, we need to deal with that. Okay, so if we can get agribusiness and grain terminal back into light industrial, then we can reapply. Then we can apply for that, and then that's gladly what we do. So that's what we suggested. And the efforts of Steve Ward and Mayor Collier and now the city engineer Jose were very constructive towards that. And we've been going back and forth all weekend, all day Monday. Now, what is a little concerning to me is right up all day we were going back and forth and discussing this. And the city's stance during the day prior to that meeting was their interpretation of that is if they voted on this, I was not going to be able to reapply for 6 months. Now, maybe they've changed, but their stance during the day was light industrial is essentially like heavy industrial. And I argued with them all day, and I said, the way I read this, that in order for me to be subject to this 6-month delay, both the county commissioners and the city council have to deny this. That's the way that reads to me. It doesn't say one of these two. It doesn't say either of. It says Board of Commissioners, county commissioners, and city council. Okay, so maybe with me discussing that with them, maybe they've changed their stance. Do I feel confident with that? Not really, because that wasn't their stance all during the day.
Yeah.
Now, they were also putting a lot of pressure on me to drop the zoning request prior to that meeting. And again, I can't understate how much I appreciate the efforts that were made yesterday and the discussion that went on this behalf. My disappointment with last night was that I was not given a chance to explain the full story. I was told prior to that meeting that I was going to have 5 minutes to make my claim. I guess I was never aware of a zoning request being limited to 5 minutes. Maybe responses to that, you know, I understand that. And in this zoning request in particular, this isn't your normal zoning request. It starts with a dispute by us of whether it was even valid. And I wanted the chance to that. And I also, through the course of the last couple of weeks, realized I was speaking to a group of people there that don't necessarily know who we are, what we do, what we have done, the types of businesses and activities that we've done, the types of zoning requirements that we have, how our zoning was changed, why we're even making this request. And I'll be quite honest, I epically failed. I had 5 minutes to convey this to them, and I failed. Now you guys are gracious enough. I mean, even before I would have liked to have spoken to them prior to the zoning request. I really would have, but I was denied the opportunity to speak to the city planning or the city council. So I was trying to educate them and the people that were there in the public as to what was going on. So I didn't see how they could make a decision on this. And I had reached out with a different alternative, but I still wanted them to know about the quick fix. How do we stop the bleeding right now? Because right now my business is unsellable and it is unfinanceable. A bank will not finance us or anybody that wants to purchase our facility with this current situation. Basically, our business is zoned agricultural, and agricultural does not allow for bread terminals. Agricultural does not allow all the other types of things that we do: rail transloading, warehousing, trucking, all these different things. So getting back to the original point, I am a little concerned because their stance right up till 5 or 6 o'clock the last time I spoke with them, their stance was, if you go forward with this vote, you cannot reapply. Now I think this pretty clearly states, well, it looks like to me, the point subject to interpretation is this entirely or substantially the same. Now, Travis, I think you and I talked about this a little bit, where you're wearing your county planning hat. I also talked to Greg Merrigan, who's on the city planning committee. And what's your interpretation of those? Well, they are drastically different. That's why there's a whole nother category. That makes sense to me. But again, that was not the city's stance all throughout the day. Now, this seems very clear to me also. I don't have to worry about a 6-month penalty or a waiting period. If one of the two vote in my favor, if both vote me down, then I think that door is open.
Yeah, if I may, here's the issue. If we need to vote on this, and I am on your side on this, I want this to work and I want it to work fast. And I am completely sympathetic with your plight. But what you're asking us to do is vote for a district that is to provide for, and this is a quote, provide for heavy industrial uses, which may create some nuisance and which are not properly associated with nor compatible with residential, office, or institutional establishments. That is a real problem for public officials because we have to vote not just for you, right? We have to vote for everybody in perpetuity who will ever own that property, and they may not all be as nice and good neighbors as you are. And so I don't want to vote on that. If I have to, I will vote no. And the reason is because it's a nuisance. not properly associated with nor compatible with residential, office, or institutional establishments, and it's immediately adjacent to residences and residential property. So to me, it's wrong on both sides, but I am a public official and I have to vote for the county in the long term. And I know that my fellow commissioners are concerned about these things too. To me, the fastest, easiest fix, if you will, is for the county to work with the city on the deal that you made. I feel very confident. I've known Kelsey Collier-Wise since she was a law student, and I feel very confident that she will make good on her assurances. I watched the whole council last night reach consensus that this was the direction that they wanted to go in. They want light industrial. If you're asking them to admit an error, that is never going to happen. Their lawyer will never let them do that. And their lawyer would be crazy if he did. Right. So that's the one thing you probably won't ever get. But I think people have expressed, a lot of concern and compassion, and they want to make this right. I think we could do it in 6 weeks. My hope would be that you would withdraw the heavy industrial because of the uncertainty of moving forward, because of that. And in other words, as I read it, and Alexis, this is where you come in and you tell me if you read it the way I read it. I read it as, if the council voted no last night, no problem. If the commission votes yes, but if the commission and the council both vote no, it's that and, then we are at this question, which is a point of uncertainty as to whether heavy industrial is substantially different from light industrial. And, I don't know that we want to fight that with the city. If we come out on different sides of that, I don't know, Alexis, what's your best advice for all of us? Because I think we all want to see this fixed.
So, my concern is, as I read this, and it'd be nice if there were some commas or something in this. And of course, hindsight is always 20/20 when we go back and look at what was the intention when we put into place an ordinance. But it says, or any other type of law, no application requesting a zoning district classification change on any property whose application includes any such property, either entirely or substantially the same as that which has been denied. So the question to me is that applicable to the property or to the rest of the application? Because if we're talking about the property, clearly another application is going to be pertaining exactly to the same property. It's not anything even slightly different. It's the same property. And so so I would say that probably does indicate that if we're talking about an application for zoning district reclassification about a parcel of property that's been denied, that property owner has to wait 6 more months before they come back. Now, alternatively, are we saying the application is substantially the same? I would say there is definitely a difference between light industrial and heavy industrial. They're two completely different zoning classifications. So that is not substantially the same. Substantially the same would be asking for the reclassification of the same category. But because there aren't some commas in there to clarify it, I think it's applicable to the property on first glance at this without doing further research on this. And I'm at least concerned enough that we're having this conversation to say, how can we do this without putting everybody in a pickle on that? My next inquiry is, though, and Drew can correct me if I'm wrong on this, if the boards come together and rezone property, that is a different process than an applicant doing that. Yes, it's the same thing in the sense that you're looking at rezoning a parcel of property, but I do not believe that the property owner is then applying for that rezone. So then it's like when joint jurisdiction went into effect or any other classification or rezone. I felt more confident to address that at our joint meeting because I had about 12 different tabs up on my computer if I was asked that question. But coming in here today, I don't know if Drew has thoughts on that or how that would go about as far as the two boards then initiating that process. Because I thought that was probably the direction that was going to go, is that we're looking at, because I also think in conjunction with that, I don't see anything. I think you're almost going to have to go that route anyway. If we're talking about light industrial instead of heavy industrial here, a grain elevator operation is not contemplated. It's not contemplated or an authorized use in light industrial. You're going to have to update what is authorized. I'm not certain what the agreement was. Is that going to be a conditional use permit or is that going to be an authorized use?
Yeah, that's what Drew and I were uncertain about after
Okay.
last night. So yeah, so it didn't come up last night. It did apparently, it was discussed apparently at the noon meeting that I was not at. But that is, I mean, that is a question. If you were to tell us what the most expeditious way of solving Mr. Myron's problem was, what would you suggest?
If I could just ask a couple of questions and maybe it might save us some discussion and worry. Okay. What's your interpretation? If we do just drop this zoning request, if we do that,
Microphone, please.
Oh, we gotta have it up. No, you're still off.
that's on.
You're
Can
on.
you hear me? Okay. If we just drop this request and I want to state we were prepared to do that. And I was trying to get to that point and then they made a vote and it was done. So there wasn't much I could do at that point, but we're definitely open to that. If we do that, do you see any problem? Do you see any way that this reapplication, the 6 months, could come into play?
I would say that then there has not been a denial by the Board of County Commissioners and the City Council. Yes, the planning commissions, were split on that, but it clearly says if it's been denied by the Board of County Commissioners and the City Council. So I think if you withdraw it, you're still in good grounds for reconsideration. I think the bigger problem is light industrial doesn't contemplate this right now. And the two councils are going to have to, and commissions are going to have to go through working through updating our zoning ordinance. And that is a more lengthy, the most expeditious was to grant his request. That was the most expeditious, but the city's not going to do that. And so that was the most expeditious way to address this situation. And I get arguments on each side for this, but it is what it is. This is where we're at. So now if the negotiation or conversation is about light industrial, there's some work to be done on a broader scale of publication and updating we're modifying our zoning ordinance then for this parcel of property. And then on top of that, going to have to rezone that parcel of property.
Yep. And I think that, it would have to be done in sequence, including notice and so on first for the rezoning. And that would we'd have to not only rezone the property, but the second step is that we have to redefine light industrial. And a decision has to be made that, and it's going to be a compromise decision, right? Is this a permitted use? What I heard last night, it sounded like it was a permitted use. The grain elevator sounded like it was they were leaning toward permitted use, but I cannot state that for a fact because they didn't state it for a fact. So I think the only question between the two that has to be worked out is what the new definition of light industrial will look like. I think there are no arguments at all about rezoning this back to light industrial, none.
So I'll just say, to simplify things, we are definitely open to dropping this, but just like she said, right now we really have no guarantees. We have no, we can only make estimates on the timeline. Okay, so, but I do want to say that, so maybe, I don't want to cause everybody a bunch of headaches and concerns trying to discuss that. We are open to that. But again, you know, I'm overseeing the interests of my and my parents' investment here, which is being significantly impacted. If I can, I would like to revisit one possibly other quicker way of fixing this, or at least would like to have Alexis comment on the whole issue of whether this zoning change should have been allowed. Okay, and I'm going to again go back to the joint jurisdictional agreement, section 2, and I have section 2 in the information that I gave.
Wait a minute, Kevin, before, we can't take up that issue right now because we're doing the zoning part. I will let you talk about it right after we get done with
Okay.
this, because I believe they're two separate issues. So we need to decide on this one.
I have a question.
If you guys are open to talking about that issue, because I'll tell you what, on the city end,
right,
it didn't matter what I said. And so I think that you're in agreement, we will gladly drop this zoning request.
Well, just 1 second on that.
I have a question. What happens if we turn around and vote today to approve it? Just to uphold what the zoning, our zoning and planning and zoning said. If we do this, does this take this 6 months out of there? I mean, I'm asking here.
It keeps.
You know, I've heard what you said, Betty, but that's what I'm just trying to speed this up as much as possible, because if we vote yes on it, if I'm reading this, that means that it goes forward. Is that correct?
No, it's dead. no
It's
matter what
dead.
happens.
Dead.
Yeah,
After this.
it's
Okay.
dead. It's a dead letter. This is
Okay.
not going to happen no matter what we do.
Okay.
However, I think that we have
In
all,
this form,
yeah,
in this form.
yeah,
Okay.
but I also think that we have also the problem of definition here. And I personally have an ethical issue with, essentially violating our own zoning code, which
Well, I don't
says
think we
that,
are,
well,
because the
it's,
zoning
We're not
code is right
following
now, we're not following, because the ordinance right now says the only thing that he can be in is his heavy industry. That's the only thing.
right.
And it's
but
a
we-
conditional
but we-
use one,
But we
Betty.
want to change that. And
And
I,
it's a
thi-
conditional use, Betty.
Yeah.
That's the only thing. If you went to that first meeting that night, the things that I heard was it was a scare tactic to say that they were going to put a slaughtering plant down.
well,
No,
but
I
that's,
heard that.
yeah, I know you heard that, but that is just not reality,
I know
right?
it's not. but
It's
that's
not
what I
reality.
heard.
But to me, right, the real issue is going back to the language of the zoning ordinance, which says it's a nuisance.
It may be.
It may be, and we know, I mean, there's talk of sale of the property, right? So we're not zoning for the Myrons. We are zoning forever. And that's my concern, is that we are zoning not for the Myrons who we know and want as part of our business community. The fastest way to zone for the Myrons is not to allow a nuisance which is not compatible with residential office and so on, but instead to redo the zoning ordinance. I mean, we're not talking about a lot of time here. We're talking about a couple of months. And I appreciate how, I appreciate how difficult this is, but this is a dead letter anyway. And forcing all of us to vote on a dead letter just seems, counterproductive.
There's no way this will be done in 4 to 6 weeks. It's impossible.
Well, but we can make, I think Mr. Byron is asking for a good faith effort. And I think we are unanimous. I think we have consensus. That's the way I should, but I think we have consensus that we want to fix this for him and that we want
Yeah,
to
that
do
we
it
wanna
as
fix it
quickly
for
as
him.
we can.
But I think you're a vote of 1 right now that I'm hearing of how we do it.
Sure.
Can I just chime in on a couple of things on that? Because, and I'm I'm not trying to get crosswise with the city about things. Everybody has to vote their conscience and do those things. But I would also say that I do agree with Mike about some of the scare tactic stuff, because the issue, there's a number of different ways we can get to the end result, right? And so one of the things that I don't know was even discussed or contemplated was, had his rezone been approved, and we're concerned about slaughterhouses and all of those things, the two boards could come together and remove all of those provisions in the aftermath. So it isn't even allowed in joint jurisdiction, even under heavy industrial, even with a conditional use permit. Now that would still have put him in a place of getting his property zoned to heavy industrial and remove the possibility of any of these things that the community is concerned about from even being a possibility within joint jurisdiction. Alternatively, and that would require an update to our zoning ordinance. But I heard a lot of conversation in the aftermath of the meeting that might be appropriate and something that should be done anyway within heavy industrial, because no one wants those things within joint jurisdiction. So could they be allowed further out? Fine, but that's within the county ordinance. What's being contemplated right now is an update possibly in the entire zoning ordinance anyway. I mean, that's an avenue to go, but it would also have been an avenue to approve the request and then go back in and update the definitions of heavy industrial and the things that were authorized to remove the things that everyone is concerned about. So I would throw that out there as a possibility.
That was the city wanted nothing to do with that. That was proposed.
Your city, your county planning
Proposed that.
members, you proposed that during the joint hearing that we had a couple weeks ago.
And that was they didn't want anything to do with it. They'd rather redefine what he is than call him a grain terminal.
And that was my follow-up thing is I hope in the entire discussion of things, I did not tune into the meeting last night, but I hope in the entire discussion of things that we're not talking about agribusiness. Because what we're talking about, we have grain terminals defined in our ordinance. And so if it's going to be an authorized use in light industrial, that's an update to the zoning. That's something, but we can't reclassify what the business is. It is a grain terminal, and we've defined that in our ordinance. And unless we're going to remove that, which would seem odd to go ahead and do that, what I would just ask everybody to focus going forward on what the permitted uses for light industrial are: wholesale trade, light manufacturing, contractor shop, storage yard, public utility facility, office, frozen food locker, printing plant, motor vehicle service station, billboard signs, electrical substations, so on and so forth. And then what the authorized uses in heavy industrial are: wholesale trade, farm store, feed store, contractor shop and storage yard, bus, truck terminal, public utility facility, frozen food locker, billboard signs, bus, truck wash, service, fruit and vegetable canning and processing, automobile storage yard, motor vehicle repair shop, those types of things. Those are authorized uses in heavy industrial. And I know that we are where we're at, and the city has said that they will not do anything with that. And they voted. Well, they haven't voted down as far as the city council yet, correct? Because they can't.
They voted, the city council voted no last night.
How can they vote without you?
Unanimously.
How can they vote without you?
Because Jose would not let us meet together. I requested the meeting together.
I don't know why on earth the planning commissions would be required to have a joint meeting and you all would not. It is a joint vote. You jointly govern that property.
When my property in joint jurisdiction was changed from ag to light industrial, it was a joint meeting of this board and county commission. So they're not acting consistently to what, and I think Jose was the city engineer at that time.
Mhm.
So it's not, it doesn't sound to me like this is being very consistent.
Well, like Drew said, there's a flow chart now that nobody knows where that come from.
Correct. Anyway, moving on.
Yes.
My opinion is that this parcel is rightfully zoned light industrial. Robert, I don't want to, what I think is that this particular application has brought up a couple of issues. One is how this property was made, put into its present ag zone. And a second one is what's an appropriate zoning for this piece of property. And what is the proper zoning classification for a grain handling facility like yours is? There's really three issues there. The first issue is what's the proper zoning for this piece of property? It's adjacent to residential and it's bracketed between light industrial and residential. Light industrial is a proper classification to be next door to residential. So it makes sense to me like that when this classification was done some years ago, it was probably misapplied. The proper spot, the proper classification for this parcel is light industrial, as close as I can tell. It's never going to be residential. It's heavy industrial is not a proper use for where it's at. It seems to me like our number one step should be reclassifying this property from agricultural to light industrial. The second thing is that, you know, I've spent a lot of time around your facilities in the past, in my present life, working in other parts of the ag community. And yes, there's some argument that your facility, you know, a lot of times you end up with a lot of dust during it. That's the only part of heavy industrial that I think that fits a grain handling facility. I think that the proper classification for it is light industrial. So, and you'll notice that at this point, I'm talking in general. I think that any grain handling facility like yours is properly zoned in light industrial. I think that this particular plot, the right classification for it, irrespective of how it's used today or is likely that it's been used in the past or used in the future, is properly light industrial. That property is not a great spot for other uses. So going ahead, as far as I can tell, what I would prefer to see, what is when I've been thinking about this the last few days at least, is that I wish we could just defer this action, because I think the right thing is to first move this property from its present use to light industrial, get that in process, and then have a reclassification of light industrial to include grain handling facilities. And then the third thing is allow you to apply for that properly classified zoning classification and zoning use. I took a lot of time in that, but that's my personal opinion.
I want to really caution the board going forward to whatever you decide to do, you have to make these decisions together. You have to by your own ordinance, and whatever decision is made that is not in compliance with statutory requirements and with our own governing law that the two boards have come together and put into place is not valid in my legal opinion. And so when I review our joint jurisdiction ordinance, and I am looking at section 14.04, hearing by the Board of County Commissioners and City Council, the Board of County Commissioners and the City Council shall jointly conduct a public hearing to act upon all applications which have been processed and forwarded to them for public hearing as provided in these regulations. The county auditor shall cause to be published a notice of the time and place when and where all persons are interested in given a full, fair, and complete hearing. Said public hearing shall comply with the provisions of chapters 11-2, 11-4, 11-6. I mean, we go through this on the day of the public hearing. The Board of County Commissioners and the City Council shall review the decisions and recommendations of their respective planning commissions on all applications coming before them. I don't know how whatever happened last night occurred, because action within joint jurisdiction must be conducted by the two boards together.
Can you,
And that's what
Can
we
you-
talked to.
yeah, can
I
you
brought
talk
up
to
last
them?
week.
can you talk to their lawyer? Can you talk to the city attorney? Because I mean, I think we all know that's where we need to go.
There are
I
two
mean, it-
words here, and you brought it up, joint versus concurrent.
Yes, yes. And I will shoot Brent an email and ask for a conversation about that, but I don't know. As far as the application, of heavy industrial, I think that's the question is, is Mr. Myron going to withdraw his application, or are you two, as the two boards, going to get together and hold that hearing and try to make a decision? But, and then if you're not, and you're going to go through a reclassification of light industrial, just have to do that together.
Yeah, I really would like to go the rezoning route because I think it's way faster and there's a lot less uncertainty. I am concerned, particularly if we begin to push the city on the joint thing. I can't believe they're going to change their vote on heavy industrial, and it's just going to take more time. I mean, I think Dick's got it right. I would, if all parties concerned want to get this done as expeditiously as possible, I think Dick's got it exactly right.
And again, we've stated, and I'll state it again, we are definitely open to dropping this. We just need to make sure of all the ramifications to us if we do it. And I guess I hope this isn't inappropriate for me to bring up, but it is part of our decision process whether we drop this or not. I have to ask the question because I know how we feel about it. We feel that this zoning change was done in error. And if that is recognized as being in error, isn't that the quickest way to fix this? I don't need to apply for a rezone. We go back to the way it was supposed to be. Isn't that the quickest way?
That's an Alexis question.
We have a chat here in the Zoom meeting from Dave Lias, and I'll just go ahead and read that. From Friday's Plain Talk, City Engineer Jose Dominguez explained the process in a memo at the November 16th meeting. Due to this being an ordinance amendment, the City Council and the County Commission must, let me scroll down here. Must hold 2 meetings. Sorry, it's either the mouse or the computer that's not cooperating here. I'm not sure which. Must hold 2 meetings, and those scheduled for next week are the first of those 2 and will be held separately. A second joint meeting of the City Council and the County Commission is also required sometime after next week's meetings.
So they're talking about rezoning.
Amending, which is the same thing. But our ordinance states that we have to meet together. I don't care how many meetings we have, we gotta be together.
Must be a joint meeting, not a concurrent meeting.
Yes.
If we meant concurrent, that's not too hard it's not that many more letters to put into the word. If we meant concurrent at the time that we made that ordinance, we'd have said concurrent. We said joint.
Mhm.
Going forward.
Well,
Any thoughts on this being an error? I included
Well, I think that's an Alexis question.
included section 2.07, which in my mind clearly states how the property zoning is supposed to be transferred over. I don't think it could be any more clear. All land coming within the jurisdiction of these regulations shall be based upon existing zoning classification pursuant to the extraterritorial zoning ordinance. That was the agreement that was in place before. It specifically states that's how it's to be handled. I don't care about some zoning map that showed something different or whatever. Nowhere in here does this say zoning is determined by the zoning map. It states right here how the zoning classification is going to be determined. And at the beginning, at the time of the agreement of this, the signing of you guys all agreeing, you know, to the joint jurisdictional agreement, we were light industrial.
Well, you were industrial.
You're industrial.
Because we didn't
Correct,
have,
that's right.
there was no
Yeah.
separation.
So Alexis, what is your take on that? So I think he's asking a procedural question. And, you know, this is assuming that there were, you know, that there was very clear evidence. But I mean, this is a lawyer question.
Very clear evidence on what?
No, I mean, so.
I mean, I'm not gonna use the term error, maybe an oversight. I mean, I'm not gonna say that, you know, what I would say is that all land coming within the jurisdiction of these regulations shall be based upon the existing zoning classification pursuant to the extraterritorial zoning ordinance. It's that comma and that next part that makes valid what happened until otherwise changed. And once that went into effect, that's why we're all sitting here today. You know, was it a situation where, and I think it was identified at the joint meeting of the two planning boards, there was a suggestion by one of the city planning members that you know, everything was to default to agricultural if there was some question, and maybe that was the oversight in the map that it was but I don't know that. I mean, I'm not going to sit here today and say that what I wasn't there, and I'm not going to say that what the two planning boards did at that point in time was an error. I'm not going to say that. I wasn't there. And so we presume that what they did after giving notice and going into effect with joint jurisdiction was valid, as provided due process and notification was established. You know, when we go through situations where there isn't notification, where there isn't the notice by publication, where there aren't those statutory requirements complied with, that's when you get into zoning ordinances that were put into effect where due process was not provided pursuant to statute, and 25 years worth of zoning stuff is thrown out the window because it's not valid. Though there's case law about that, because the hearings weren't published appropriately and those types of things. But when there's a comprehensive rezone, which is what joint jurisdiction was in establishing that, that's where the notice by publication comes in and those types of things.
So if I'm hearing everything right here today, basically we have two choices. We can deny it. Because if we don't deny it, the city's already denied it, so it's a dead issue, correct? Or he can withdraw his application. And we get together with the city at a meeting and figure out how we're gonna rezone it. Is that where we're at?
Not really.
Almost, not quite.
Not quite.
The reoccurring theme here is we're not following our ordinance.
Right, I agree with you.
I mean, it's clearly stated how we're supposed to make this decision. Well, none of that's happened yet.
Right.
So the best we can do is set that meeting up, because last night's meeting means nothing and this meeting means nothing, no matter how we vote, because we didn't follow the ordinance. He can still withdraw. I hope he doesn't. I'd like to, well, I mean, like I said, voting for it's not gonna matter. I mean, it's a moot point on that. My biggest problem is I don't trust the city. The things that they were using as the scare tactic of what could go in there is also allowed in the light industrial. You know, the packing plant and the rendering plant aren't.
Right.
But there's other things that they brought up specifically that are in light industrial. How all of a sudden are they okay with it? I mean, they're wanting us to deny his permit so we can, in good faith, which they have yet to provide any good faith on this, in this joint jurisdiction, I believe. How am I supposed to go into that meeting thinking they have everybody's best interest in mind? Because I know who's running the city over there, and it's not the council.
Yeah, so in my concern is that Kevin Myron get what he needs as soon as possible. And we can go through all of, and that will just lengthen the process. It will create uncertainty. It will create a certain amount of bad will between the county and the city. I really, if what we're making here is a decision in the best interests of Mr. Myron's property and the best interests of the county in the long term, then I think that the direction that Dick is going in is the way to go. And this really comes down to your decision. And I know that puts you on the spot, but I think we probably, I don't know if there are any new things to be said that we haven't already said. But it's probably time to either make a motion or to withdraw the application. And that is entirely your decision. I think you've heard from all of us. We're where we are. And I think where the city's headed. What I'd like to see is an agreement between the council and the commission on rezoning. I think people's hearts are in the right place. And I think that your neighbors care. And I think it can happen reasonably quickly.
I think that, really, I think we'd get the assurances from our members of our planning commission that we would follow that pathway of doing for rezoning the property where it ought to be, should have been perhaps in the first place. And then adding your classification to that light industrial. And where it should have been in the first place, of course, is light industrial. And have that our planning commission would start that process of, because that's where it's got to go first, of doing those two steps that allows you to get where you want to go. Now, if we can, it could very well be that members of the city planning commission is where it really should start over there too. It's going to have to do this as a joint jurisdiction area. With some pressure from you and those neighbors that were kind enough to write letters and show up to allow that to push that process along. If we can get a few of those neighbors that say, hey, this is the decision that we want to see. We don't want it to end up remaining ag, have it so you're stranded with it. You're not going to be able to use it the way it is and have it end up being a blighted area sometime in the future by not doing anything. The very best thing for you and your neighbors, for the city and the council, is to have it properly rezoned and then your type of business properly classified. And hopefully we could have that process work on the city side. I'm pretty sure it could work on our side.
I don't see the planning board having any issue with that.
And Drew, you'd be willing to make this a priority?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, without a doubt. I am very uncomfortable not having anything in writing.
Agreed.
Yeah, when nothing from them last night is bad for us. That's the bad part. No guarantees, just doesn't help.
Well, I think though that the council as a whole last night was committed to the rezone to light industrial. I mean, I don't think that's a question. I think the only question out there is what's going to be conditional use and what's going to be permitted use. And those are just unknowns at this time. But no matter what, we have to work that out. And
I was part of those conversations, what was indicated to me by the city engineer, and I got varying from Mayor Collier and Steve Ward, I was given information, but from Jose, he told me that both would have to be under conditional uses. I believe his philosophy was It's a conditional use under heavy industrial, so it has to be a conditional use under light industrial. And in regards to the agribusiness, he claimed it was too broad of a category to not be controlled. I do not agree with either of those. Agribusiness under your classification is an allowed use. And as far as a grain terminal, I don't see a whole lot of subject, I don't see how that's subject to a whole lot of interpretation. It's pretty specific what it is. I don't think the use of that could be abused or needs to be monitored. There's a grain terminal in every county in South Dakota. We're an ag state. That's an expected business in this community and in any community. So I do disagree with those, and I anticipate that will be their stance on those based on what the city engineer said. So what that also opens the door to is, okay, you're asking me to drop this request. I'm not going to be allowed to be in the only category that allows for grain elevators. Okay. I'm listening to everything that everybody's saying. I'm trying to offer solutions, but I'm also, again, out of respect to our investment, my parents' investment, I'm trying to remedy this as quickly as possible. My process through this right now is going on a couple months already. I feel more likely that just the initial stage of this is probably going to go on at least 3 months. And if there's going to be some dispute and some compromise and some back and forth, I haven't seen where that's worked real well in the past. And I'm not saying who's at fault or anyone's at fault. This process, this whole joint jurisdictional agreement, and this is another topic that I would like to speak about at another time, is a joke. It's broken. It's not working. It sure as heck isn't helping my business and satisfying what my business needs are, or my zoning needs, or anything. This entire process is so painful. It's been a nightmare for us. But we go through this whole process. Let's say it takes 3 or 4 months. Then if it's a conditional use, then I have to reapply for that permit, that conditional use, and I got to go through the entire process all again. The notification in the paper, all the meetings. I've got to meet with all the planning commissions on both sides. I got to meet with the city council. I got to meet with the county commissioners. I got to go through all that process twice. So we're looking at what, I don't know, 6 to 8 months.
Well, let's ask Drew, because, Drew, what kind of timeline can you suggest would be reasonable, taking into account all this, maybe you can lay out for Mr. Myron the steps, because I think that might really help to nail things down.
The city last night said 4 to 6 weeks just to get the changes in place. Practically, I think it's very optimistic, not impossible, but optimistic. And then we gotta wait, then you have to apply it, and we gotta go through the rezone and CUP. Maybe this time we can do the rezone and CUP concurrently. City staff was very opposed to that the first time, but maybe this time around we can have both. 3 to 6 months is about what I expect. As far as researching the actual timeline, I have not had a chance to, but that would be my estimate.
Yeah, I think the choice is yours at this point on how you want to proceed, because, the commission at some point has to have a vote. And, I don't think anybody wants to have a premature vote. You felt that last night's vote was premature. So I think this is the time to make a decision. And I know that there's uncertainty in both directions, but we're doing our best.
You don't have to decide right now.
Well,
Would you like, we could table it.
All this is dragging on and on and on. I mean, I can directly point to now that I realize what's going on. now that I'm aware that my zoning was changed on me, because we don't feel like we were notified of this before or after. We had no evidence of that the zone had changed. We discovered it how many years later?
10 years.
I mean,
Next month.
So, and again, that's a whole nother issue. I'd like to solve this as quick as we can. It's nice, and I appreciate all the efforts and the way things have gone for the last couple days. And I can't begin to explain my appreciation on the county side of things about how well things have, I mean, the efforts that have been made, the concern that's been shown, the conversations that we've had, the time that's been given to this by everyone on the city, or excuse me, the county planning and county commissioners, and Drew. I mean, I didn't mean to bring all this burden on him, you know, but I didn't want it either, you know, but I've been living this for the last 3 months, every day. And you're going to tell me that I'm going to live this for a continued 3 to 6 months. I'm just in disbelief, but I appreciate the efforts. But in looking at this proposal, I can look at the way things have been handled the last day or two, or I can look at the way I've been treated on the city side, both by the planning committee and by the city council, and in particular the city staff. I can look at the way that I've been treated the last 3 months. Now they are still in belief that this zoning change was okay. They see no problem with this. Now, from our end of it, we don't believe we were notified properly before it or after it. We don't think that the zoning change was ever discussed. There's absolutely no black and white evidence of our property being discussed or a reason given for this zoning change. And then it looks like to me that it's in direct violation of the very agreement that this was part of. And they still think that's okay. And I get the sense that you guys don't feel it's okay. I know the county planning commission doesn't feel this okay, but you know, it is what it is, and I want to do whatever decisions we got to do to get this fixed. But you have to look, I mean, we're taking this all on faith. We have zero guarantees that anything's going to be done for us. What if the city looks into this and says, oh, you know what? We look at this and we interpret this, that this says we can't do this, so we're done. You know, this was decided by that map on the joint jurisdictional agreement, and we feel that that's the proper zoning and that's where we're going to stay. Now that sounds silly to say, but that's the caliber of kind of remarks that I've been getting over the last 3 months. So I'll be honest, I don't know what to do at this point. I'm exhausted with this process.
One possibility, of course, is for the commission to table it. But I know that there are deadlines. So what's our deadline?
I have to look up what the
Yeah.
deadline is.
Could we, for example, table it for next week to give the Myrons a chance?
I'm going to speak for Alexis here and myself. We're not, don't tape.
Okay, don't table it.
Don't tape.
Okay,
That opens another can of worms.
okay,
I know Alexis feels as strongly as I do about that.
okay.
No tape. I don't like to speak for her. I'll never do it again, but on that issue.
You can make a prediction, huh?
Yeah.
Well, we can't make a decision on that right now, on their application. We can't make a decision today because it won't hold up because we're not jointly with the city. Just like their vote of no last night, that was for practice. It doesn't mean anything. The whole thing they went through, because we're not doing it jointly.
If we were just doing a rezone in the county, this would just be the first reading. We discuss it. Then we go at the second meeting at the next meeting.
So are you proposing no vote today, no matter what?
It's not gonna do any good. I mean, it's not gonna be legal.
Yeah, that's basically what Alexis said, right? And that's what it says in the thing too.
Well, in every state codified law that's quoted in our joint jurisdiction, it says jointly. There's nothing that says concurrent, separately. It's all jointly. Decisions have to be-
Why does, they're both in? You said it kills this whole deal.
No, it doesn't, no. It doesn't, that vote last night doesn't mean anything. We have to be together.
We're spending a lot of time here.
I know.
We spend a lot of time for nothing. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, so, it seems to me that we kind of know the direction that this would go in, even if we had a joint meeting. And it seems to me that what we really need to do is to begin work on rezoning. And, I'd like to propose that, Drew get it going. And that we have a joint meeting with the city to do that. We have to have a joint meeting anyway. We can do both things at one meeting. And both pieces of business at one meeting, and that we do it soon. And I know we've got to have notice in order to have a meeting, but I just want to get it fixed.
Drew, is there a timeline that we have to make a decision on this? Once the application has been submitted? Because I know the county has it.
Yes, they're
It's that 60-day thing.
65 days
Yep.
for action on something.
Since
And-
submission of application.
Yeah. And how many days has it been?
Is it in your packet, this application?
Kevin, do you know when you applied?
I don't. Well, again, I don't want you guys to
No, just hold on.
waste a lot of time and effort. We need to get this done as fast as possible. I still don't understand. Why? It seems pretty clear to me that the guidelines weren't followed on the zoning transfer. I just don't understand why that isn't being addressed, and why. I don't care how you label it. And at this point, I'm not even sure I care. Well, I've exhausted myself trying to find out how this happened in the process, who did it, and I can't get any answers. I'm not sure I even care anymore. If this was done in error, why can't we recognize that and put it back to the way that it was? Isn't that what we all want?
I
That
mean,
takes a process anyway, Kevin, that we just can't make a resolution here saying that, well, there was a problem back in 2000, whatever, and for whatever reason there was, it still takes a process to right an error even. So we wouldn't be able to say, make a resolution today that would fix your problem anyhow. It's a process, no matter how it's done. So I know that's what you'd like to hear, but I know that that's not possible.
Looks like October 26th. That's what I got in this
Yeah.
one thing.
And we had the planning commission hearing within that time. I don't know
But that's not a decision. That's just a
the
recommendation.
recommendation.
So we have time.
To expedite this, I imagine we will drop the zoning request. And that really bothers me. I'm gonna be honest, but I'm doing it in good faith to try and get this resolved. I don't know what you guys can say or what you can't say. I know you can't indicate, hey, we're gonna approve this, but I guess our sense is that everyone's okay with this new proposal, adding these two categories. I would like for you to fight for both of those to be put under allowed uses, not complicate things all over again by having them be conditional use. I don't see the sense of that. And I guess we just like to feel that you all are on board with that and will make every effort. I'm not concerned about things on your end. You know where my concern is. And I think it's damn justified based on the way I've been treated the last 3 months. I think it's absolutely justified. And I'll be quiet. Like I said, I can't state enough how much I appreciate the change in effort on the city's part. The mayor, Steve Ward, and finally, the city engineer. But I was still getting, it was still to the effect of, well, you need to drop the zoning request in order for us to do this. And I don't think that was the right way for that to be handled. All I was saying was, I need my chance to tell the city council what's going on. How do they even know what's going on? The people that the neighbors and everything like that, we want them to know what's going on. We want them to be a part. We want them to make informed decisions about this whole thing, and that's all I was trying to do. But so I guess that's where we're at. We're ready to drop this zone request.
How quick can we get advertised for a joint meeting?
For a joint meeting.
Kind of depends on the city schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah. Find out the date, start moving forward on that right
Well, what do you mean their schedule?
when they're willing to meet.
If we were to advertise this, they will have to be there. What is the requirements for app or for notification?
If you guys were to have a special meeting, I would just need to post it 24 hours in advance. If it's
This is
a joint meeting,
This is a public.
I don't,
This
for a
has to be
public hearing, I believe it has to be 10 days.
Yeah.
Yeah,
10 days what?
from
Published
the
10
date
days
of
prior?
publication,
So when would that be?
which would have to be next week because the deadline has already passed for this week.
So 10 days would put us, if it was next Friday, that's the 17th.
Right. So
it's
the
10 days
soonest
after.
would be like the 27th. I don't even know what day that falls on, but
Monday.
just.
27th would be a regular meeting for our planning commission.
Yeah, we've already got one for that.
Yeah.
What I'm asking is, if we don't take action on this, I mean, if no action is taken, and since the city wouldn't meet with us, we have to republish. If he doesn't pull the application, I was trying to figure out when that 65 days expires.
That's for the planning commission.
Well, that's why I asked what the city, what we have for the.
That part I don't know. But 65 days for the planning commission to take action. I don't know if there's another one after that. I have to.
Because we can't just sit on it forever.
No. I would like to have a joint meeting just to work out what changes are gonna be to light industrial and get that from city council.
Grain terminal. And that's it.
Get permitted use or conditional use.
I think if they're willing, I would I would make it a conditional use, but I don't want any conditions on theirs. I want it to just go through. I don't think I mean, it's been there. Nobody has a problem with it. Why are we gonna start limiting them now? Now, I have no problem with future ones, if they wanna do that.
Can you clarify that? Like, what are you?
Well, so give them their conditional use permit, but there's no conditions on it. They can operate the way they have been.
I think they can do that anyway. So the question is all, and I think they have a pre-existing non-conforming use. So none of that's a problem for them, but what's a problem for them is new operations,
New op-
sale, and so on.
New operations
So
would have
that's
to
what
get-
they need the zoning for.
Yeah, I agree with the zoning. But once we zone it, then Drew asked, is it gonna be under permitted use or is it gonna be a conditional use? And I'm okay with conditional use, as long as their conditional use doesn't have any conditions on it. Because any further business or any future business, if it's a conditional use, they have to come in and get it anyway.
Yeah, and I think what they talked about last night was was a basic agreement that yes, they would be permitted. You know, that they would, I mean, they didn't talk about status, right? But they did say that they were for the uses that.
No, but they're gonna bring up what happens when the next one comes in. Are they gonna allow that to be a permitted use?
Mhm.
I think that going ahead, and I think the fastest way to do it would be to do a conditional use, because we're gonna have less issues on the other side. We'll have fewer issues on the other side likely, and rightfully, I think that conditional use would probably be appropriate, thinking in terms of everything that would likely to be in that classification going forward. It doesn't mean that it's going to slow your process down. It could.
We can do the conditional use and the zoning at the same time.
Yep, that's right. It can be done
Yeah,
exactly the same
that's, I
time.
think that's the way to
It
do
could
it.
slow your process down, but it wouldn't necessarily. I don't think it would necessarily have to.
You'd have your zoning in the same amount of time.
Correct.
But the city would be able, the city and the county should be able to put in, say, we're moving grain terminal to light industrial,
Right.
and that is the only change.
There's some wording change that has to be done to the definition of light industrial.
Why is that?
That's what I'm wondering, because I didn't think that there would be necessarily
This would be,
in the heading.
yeah. There may, I don't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing I heard was to add grain terminal with a definition into light industrial. So light industrial would incorporate grain terminal as a conditional use.
Under light industrial, second sentence, these uses do not depend on frequent personal visits from customers or clients, do not include apartments.
Mhm.
Okay, I would add the word persistent and right before frequent.
Okay.
That means that during your busy period, during harvest season, you would have frequent use for an abbreviated time.
Kind of hopes he has frequent views.
You hope
All
so.
year round.
Yeah, well, actually,
You know,
actually,
I'm saying.
it gets to be pretty periodic in fact.
But you know, really, it shouldn't, I mean, it shouldn't be a problem. I mean, if they're allowing ready mix place
Yeah,
facilities,
Yeah,
there can be trucks in and out of there all the time too.
yeah, shouldn't be any different.
So I don't know why we would have to change the definition if they're gonna allow that.
right.
I mean, I think it's just a simple grain terminal in the light industrial. and
If there
call it
were-
good.
If there were objections, that's the two words that I would add to address that.
Well, and I guess we do have the other category, agribusiness.
Correct.
That's important to us too. That may not be the primary use of our facility right now, but that has definitely been something we've done in the past.
Right.
And I don't want to lose that right. Or again, you can look at any grain facility and most of them, the majority of them are hand in hand, essentially agribusiness and grain terminal. They're in those same, no matter what we do or somebody does in the future, I don't want to lose that right.
Yeah. And
Well,
I don't think you.
You'd still
don't
have
think
it under
it's-
a farm store or feed store, I think.
Correct.
You'd still have that, because this talks about the storage of fertilizer or farm chemicals on the site. So I mean, you could have, I would think you'd still be covered by that, seed, selling seed or whatever.
Well,
Well, maybe not with the seed.
no, because the city would not consider Nutrien to be a farm store or feed store.
They didn't.
No.
No, that's
They
right.
said they're not a farm store or feed store, which in the definition specifically says a farm store, feed store stores bulk fertilizer either in dry form or liquid form.
Right.
I don't know what Nutrien would be if that's not exactly what they are.
Yeah, that's.
And it's in
We're an
town.
agribusiness, they're an agribusiness. I don't know how you can not be an agribusiness in this.
Well, I mean, agribusiness is a lot of, I mean, that's a big scope of what everything could be. But we've got farm store or feed store in there, and they would, I mean, that's my biggest problem with this whole thing. It doesn't matter what we put in there. They're gonna define it however they want. And that's what, I mean, because if Nutrient is not a farm store or feed store, what are they?
Yeah. And you're a warehouse, which is also within.
And,
there.
and again, and I
That's
will
true.
say this, and I don't, I'm not trying to attack the city, but again, I have to look at the way that I've been treated the last three months. When I hear things like, well, okay, let's put that under a conditional use and let's, you know, add this additional restriction and that additional restriction. It's hard not to sit in this seat and just cringe because I see the way things have been interpreted, and everything that you do that limits or possibly harnesses me. I mean, my God, it's hard enough to be in business anyway. And particularly in a business subject to the whims of Mother Nature, and you've got events like COVID happening and things like that. I don't need my hands tied by regulations. I certainly didn't need this zoning mess.
So if you were to go light industrial, you know, if we could get you there,
Mhm,
your permitted uses that you don't have to ask for permission for.
mhm.
Wholesale trade, light manufacturing, contractor shop or storage yard. I'm just gonna read the ones I think would apply to you.
Warehouse.
Warehouse, the farm store, feed store, truck wash, you know.
Yeah.
Everything you're quoting is this right here, right?
Right.
Yes.
You guys all got a copy of that?
Yeah, I've said it all along. That's where we were. That's where we want to be. But we've got to have that grain terminal and that agribusiness in there. I can't even apply for it, I don't believe, unless those are in there.
You wouldn't need ag business, I don't think, would you? We can put it in there. I don't have a problem with it, but it's just
Well,
such a broad
if we
scope.
just put grain terminal, can I sell fertilizer, chemical, seed?
Because you'll be a farm store, feed store. Because that is,
That's permitted for.
it's permitted. It's permitted. I mean,
That's
these
a
are
permitted
allowed.
use.
These are great discussion items, but they're for that joint meeting with the city and county. I want the executive boards to work that out, so Jose and I aren't beating our heads together, because that is awful.
And again, here's where my fear is. I hear what you guys are saying and it all makes sense. And this is great. But there's that other group that needs to be part of this discussion. And it's not any fault of theirs, but I'm not sure they even understand my business or what it is that we do. And how would they, you know? And that's part of what I was trying to explain last night as part of my frustration, you know. Possibly people that don't really understand my business and what it needs are going to be making decisions on what I can and can't do. And that's really hard. That again goes back to the issues of this whole joint jurisdictional agreement. But we want to do whatever we can do to move this forward. Now I'm understanding that maybe all that we went through yesterday means nothing.
Not really, not
We-
really.
we need to-
It meant everything.
We need to
Actually.
move on, and unfortunately for us, I think that path leads to us dropping the zoning request. But man, we are just being left hanging out in the wind.
See, we're talking about a legislative process here, and legislative processes on any one question might take days to weeks to months to even years. And believe me, almost all the progress in any legislative process is made in certain little 5-minute increments. It's 5 minutes somewhere within that process that you had in the last couple of days, in the last day, that makes all the difference. And unfortunately, that's normal.
Basically.
What we need to do is carry that same philosophy on ahead. Is that we need to do what we can to make those 5-minute increments occur quicker in a shorter overall time period. And I think that can be done.
Can I ask a question? If you guys table this right now, can all this other get done
Can we
while
start
it's
that,
tabled?
we start that process?
No. You can't.
Because your application is for heavy industrial. We can't table it and then redo your application and then vote.
No,
on it.
not do our application, but make sure the city and you get it in the right category that we can go into it.
I think
Can the actions to
we figured out what the right category is. And it's what I said 45 minutes ago. That's where you belong. And we were kind of spinning our wheels trying to fit a square peg in a round hole before. Let's get the round peg in the round hole.
Well, my understanding is the city gave their staff direction
Mhm.
to move it to light industrial, correct?
That's what they indicated. They tried it.
So that sounds like when we can direct you to go, do the light industrial also. Is there anything that you need in light industrial that's not there?
So I guess we felt comfortable with, because like I said, grain terminal / grain processing was a new term introduced in the joint, so that needs to be in there. Otherwise, I think we fell under agribusiness. That's where you guys put us in the zoning,
County zone.
so I guess we kind of wanted to have that in there as well, but other than those, no, that fits all the things that we have done and that we possibly want to do. So no, that solves that. I just wish it would move faster.
Well, I don't know why the joint planning boards can't meet on the last day of the month, or the last Monday of the month.
To get notification in for the changes, we're past date, but whatever the date is soonest, we can have,
How are we past the date?
we pass the date, I think we passed the date.
How many days you gotta get?
At least the 7th.
Yeah,
So if you had 10, it'd be 17.
Yeah, but the
Which-
publication for the newspaper,
Yeah.
whatever, we're gonna move as fast as possible.
publication won't be till the 17th,
Right.
which gives us time to meet on the 27th together.
And I do like the idea of getting grain terminal out of that heavy industrial category. Because that's part of our whole problem here. I don't understand why it was put in a category that was never going to be allowed. Was that by design? I mean, if it's never going to be allowed, why was that the only category that has grain terminal?
Well,
I
that
mean-
whole section is questionable, because there's a lot of things in there that are never gonna be allowed.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of wondering why we have it.
Well, in part, I think it's because our zoning is it starts out, it's at the Regional Planning Commission, who's also in Sioux Falls and is planning for Sioux Falls. And there are a lot of things that are in our planning
No,
documents just because of that.
obviously, some
CCOG
of
builds
the
them.
Industry and now is heavy industry, right?
I don't know what they would classify it as.
Wasaba being heavy industry.
It probably should be.
I don't know what they're classified as,
Yeah, I don't remember.
Would they
actually.
be under general manufacturing?
but they're in the city, so.
Yeah,
Right, but they're in the county.
Yeah, but they're not in the joint jurisdiction. I mean, so the city did whatever they wanted.
yeah, the city has lead within the city limits. So their zoning and planning and zoning is primary within the city limits. So
Yeah, it's
Wasaba
interesting-
doesn't.
It's interesting that we're in the county and we're subject to the joint jurisdictional. And things can be dictated by the city on what we can and can't do, but yet you guys have no.
Yeah, you
control
don't want to
over
get
what-
me started on that.
Okay, well, okay, so residential grew out to where we are, and now it's drastically impacting what we can and can't do.
Yeah,
I looked it up, there was maybe 2 or 3 homes that were built on that entire bluff area prior to 1967.
Right.
All those other homes came in after that business had been established there. And where's my rights to say, hey, you can't build houses here? Not that I would, but you can't build houses here because that's gonna later and infringe on what I can and can't do. You know, this very instance. Boy, that seems unfair, but. All right, we'll formally drop the motion, request for the rezone to heavy industrial. I apologize for this taking so long for us to hash through this, but
That's not yours to apologize for.
again, we've been living on a 3-month nightmare. Looks like we're gonna go on for another 3 to 6 months. I would implore you to make every effort to get this through as quickly as possible. And as you have been doing, continue to look out for our interests as well as everyone else. And it's maybe not the right way to look at this, but I do feel we've been wronged in this situation. And maybe we should be granted a little bit of leniency in getting this back to the way it needs to be. And then what's in the best interest for everybody. Man, if we've been impacted by this.
That's our job.
So if we really wanted to speed this up, we can do it just like we did with medical marijuana ordinance. Everybody was in the same room. Planning and city and council, city and county.
That was a license, though. But I will check that documentation that,
I thought that was the ordinance. I didn't think, because we did the license, because the license fell on us, I thought.
but the license applied to both jurisdictions.
But it was still a change to the ordinance. It's no different.
Let me research. I want to talk to CDOT, Dr. Patrick.
I mean, because that will speed it up a lot.
Yeah, that'd be it.
Would it be appropriate or allowed for me to make a few comments in regards to the joint jurisdictional agreement and this whole situation that I've just been going through?
Yeah, because that'll fall under public comment, which is right after we're done with. Your,
Okay.
Yeah.
since you've-
Is everybody okay
since
with
you've
that?
withdrawn.
Because I do have some definite opinions.
Certainly within your rights.
You tell me when it's the right time to bring that up, please.
Right now.
Okay, all right. Well, in regards to this joint jurisdictional agreement, I mean, as I have said many times, this last 3 months has been a nightmare. This joint jurisdictional agreement, I believe, opened the door for the very situation that happened. Our zoning, again, and I hate to beat a dead horse, but we feel like we were not given proper notice. We included with the information that you have what the city felt was their version of proper notice. Okay, and then that says regarding adoption of the joint jurisdictional zone regulations. Nowhere in there does it talk anything about zoning changes. We understood that to mean that was these are the guidelines for the new agreement. I would have anticipated a map with showing what the new boundaries are. But I don't know that I would have anticipated any change in zoning. Because every piece of property that was zoned at that point had already gone through some process and was valid. Our property being the example. Terminal Grain in 1987 applied for industrial, and the whole process went through and it was granted. So in our minds, this is not adequate notice. I can't look at this and predict that my zoning was going to be changed from that.
Did you guys put this notice in, or did the city? Who put this in the paper?
It's probably hard to know this many years after.
Well, somebody had to put it in there.
Right, but
I suspect it was the city, but I don't know that for a fact.
comments were to go to the Clay County Auditor,
That doesn't mean it,
but I'm not. I guess it doesn't matter who is tasked with doing the notice, but yeah, the notice here is what would have gone into the paper.
I've noted, I mean, I've talked to Travis about this, and there's a definite difference regarding notice. Now, this is the way I feel, this is the way everyone that I told this story to has felt. You know, we don't feel like we were notified properly, okay? And when I tell that my zoning was changed without us being notified, without us being a part of it, the first comment out of everyone's mouth is you can't do that. That was the first comment out of Travis's mouth when we discussed this. You can't do that. Now explain to me the city that, you know, under certain circumstances, governmental bodies have the right to make mass zoning changes without notifying the individual landowners. I explained that to Travis, and if I understand it right, your guys' philosophy is in that instance, then you become the landowner and you still feel obligated to notify everyone around. And I believe that has been your practice. When other properties that we own, that was your practice. And I feel that's appropriate. And I feel that's the way it should be handled every time. It looks to me like within this joint jurisdictional agreement that went away. And I'm not happy with that. I don't think anybody in the county is happy with that. If you talk to 99% of the people in the county, they're going to believe that if their zoning is going to be changed, they're going to be notified.
In writing.
That's the way everybody believes it to be. And this has shown that it's not. And I blame this agreement for allowing this to happen. Now you look at the whole fiasco that we've gone through. Okay, this has cost us time and money. This has been a huge waste of all of yours time. And again, I think this was allowed because of the joint jurisdictional agreement. The idea of the process that we have to go through for any change, whether it be zoning categories or my zoning change or any of these kinds of things, or if now I need to, something that I'm doing falls under a conditional use. Okay, now I got to go through, I need to apply for that so that I can do that with my business. This whole process of meeting with both planning committees, meeting the city council, meeting the county commissioners, and then the joint. Now, I don't know if this current, it doesn't sound like the right process was even followed here on our issue. This seems to me like it's too complicated. It seems like we're jumping through a lot of hoops that other businesses are not subject to. You kind of mentioned one of our earlier meetings. It almost kind of seems like targeting. Why just because where we are, or because residential moved out to us, are we being subject to all these? Now, I understand and want to give respect to the rights of all those landowners, but everything that we're doing, we keep limiting what businesses can do. And let's be honest, who's getting impacted most by this jurisdictional agreement? It's the businesses or potential businesses. And we can't figure out why Vermillion isn't having the growth that we see in other communities. I always compare us, maybe, it's like Yankton or SDSU, they're another college town, or even I drive by every day by Beersford. They are all kicking our butts in commerce and economic development. And you know why? I think it's part of this jurisdictional agreement. Look at the way that this jurisdictional agreement treated Nutrient. Look at the battles that they had to try and build a new facility. And this may not even be appropriate to say, but I look at my father, who's been in business for over 50 years. He has developed a minimum of 3 multi-million-dollar facilities here in Clay County. His businesses were the backbone of Nutrient. We started all those. We built those up. Again, those were all multi-million-dollar facilities. We built up $1 multi-million-dollar facility that right now is worthless. We cannot sell it. I'm not sure who in Clay County. I mean, you throw out your Polarises and Walmarts and Sanfords and things like that, but I'm not sure who in Clay County has invested more money in commerce and infrastructure than my father. So I'm telling you that this agreement has significantly impacted him, probably your largest investor in Clay County. Certainly not serving his needs. We all know that it also impacted nutrient. You know, so now you're talking a couple of your biggest industries in the entire county have been negatively affected by this. How much did that cost them? Every one of those moves that they had to make and redo, and who was objecting to it? Who was approving it? Who was objecting to it? I believe you guys were continually approving the moves that they requests that they made, and I believe the city was continually rejecting them. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn. I look at this process that I'm having to go through, this nightmare for these last 3 months, and I blame it on this joint jurisdictional agreement. Quite plain and simple, I believe the city has too much control. At a minimum, it should at least be 49% the city, 51% the county. In disputes that can't be resolved, I believe this should default to the county. Quite honestly, for my property that falls in the joint jurisdictional agreement, I believe you folks are more qualified to discuss it. You know my industry, you have a better knowledge, and that's why you were elected as county commissioners. And that's why just from the get-go, we didn't let the city control the whole county. We have county commissioners to control and moderate the county properties. At a minimum, this joint jurisdictional agreement needs to be looked at. To be quite honest, I'd just sooner go away and we start over. If I understand it right, the whole reason this came about was in 2011, the state changed the laws. Previously, the city grabbed a 3-mile radius. You guys didn't have any choice. And in 2011, the state changed the laws and basically kind of took away that right. So the only way you could have a joint jurisdictional agreement was if you guys agreed to it, which this entity did. And that's why we wrote up the joint jurisdictional agreement. In my mind, if you elected to do this, you can also elect not to do it until some better measures get put in place. And again, the timing of all this, I think some expediency on some issues needs to be an option. And this is a laborious process, long drawn out laborious process. And I can attest to it because I'm living it. I've been going on through this for about 3 months, and I'm probably going to go on for another 3 to 6 months. Is this joint jurisdictional agreement serving the needs of your constituents? It's not for us. Something needs to be done. And it seems like there's a lot of issues, different things with the zoning. I would like both entities, both planning committees to look at these zoning categories. And why don't we, it was proposed by your committee, okay, let's eliminate the things in heavy industrial that bother you. Well, I don't know why they're in there anyway, if nobody wants them, and we don't even want them to be a possibility. And that's what your committee wanted to do. And they met with resistance on the other side. Now, not all of them, I will point out Greg Merrigan as an individual that tried very hard and spoke with me many times on these issues and has been worked towards trying to resolve it. And the turning point of the city to start working with this wasn't just me and my efforts. I think maybe I flat out annoyed them so much that they knew I wasn't going to go away that they started to compromise. But I think they were all also listening to comments by Drew and Travis and you guys possibly and members of the county planning and people like Greg Merrigan. And it was a collection that finally I think got them to change. But boy, that was not the way I was treated at first. And again, I'm trying to figure out why a few people were dictating everything in my situation. I don't think that's right. I don't think that's fair. I saw the efforts that you guys were making to try and fix this, and I saw why you couldn't. And was this joint jurisdictional agreement that allowed that. I know it's probably not as simple, just like I would like you to recognize the error on my zoning and fix it immediately. In my mind, that should be able to happen. In my mind, I'd like this to just go away. It's not working, and I don't want to look forward to a future doing business in this community with this type of agreement in place. Through this whole process that we've had to do, like I said, my dad, I keep saying it over. My dad's been doing business here for over 5 decades. I've been running the grain elevators for about 30 years. Right now, we are seriously looking at this going, why are we continuing to invest in this community? We just put millions at risk, and we don't know when, we don't even know if this is going to get resolved. Are we going to end up having a fire sale and auctioning off this facility because we can't withstand the negative effects of this for long? Just because we're in business doesn't mean we're making money, and doesn't mean that we're going to continue to operate. And right now, we're seriously questioning why we're investing the amounts of money that we're investing in this community. I'm not, after the results of the last month, I mean, it was nice. There were very many comments about, hey, we have no problem with the elevator, you're a good neighbor, you know, but yet that didn't stop people from going up there and not caring about our situation and saying, we don't want this to happen. I respect their opinions and their right to say that, but a lot of them were not even aware of the issues. I don't want to render it. I don't want this approved, so I don't want a rendering plan to go in there. Well, it couldn't have gone in there because it's a conditional use, and you know, it's really not even part of the conversation. I call that the nuclear power plant objection. You know, we're really happy with your business down there, but I'm not going to approve any zoning changes because I don't want a nuclear power plant to come in. No, it can't. Under any zoning situation, it's not economic feasible. There's 100 reasons why that's not even a valid point. And those were the kinds of comments that I've been getting over the last 3 or 4 weeks. You know, again, that's why I think this needs to be in the hands of the people that are best able to make these types of decisions. And based on what I've seen the last 3 months, I don't think this joint jurisdictional agreement is working with that. Based on what I saw with Nutrient, I don't think that's working. I've heard of another situation where there was a housing development that possibly wanted to go out on the bluff by overlooking kind of the Burbank area. As I understand it, part of the property fell in the county's section, part of it fell in the joint jurisdictional. I believe you guys passed the portion there. They didn't even apply for the portion that was in the joint jurisdictional because they were informed that that would not be approved. Again, tell me why not. Can housing developments on the bluff only be allowed if the city's involved? Is that the deal? We've got the bluffs and we've got the Bliss Point, you know, this agreement is not serving the needs of the county. It's serving the needs of the city very well. They're in a preferential situation. It needs at a minimum analyzed, probably rewritten. But there's too much control, there's too much veto power with the city. And then a butting of heads and where things can't be figured out. Okay, for this instance, okay, they voted down my zoning request. And if you guys had approved it, where do I go from there? There's no resolution. I can't, my situation doesn't get fixed and I can't. Now, luckily, I'm able to offer a different solution. We're going to try and go down that path. But again, in other circumstances, how does that get resolved? This has to default to somebody, and that somebody needs to be you guys. You were voted in, you're the most qualified to handle these issues. I think we need to see a move towards that. And I'm asking for that. And I'm going to state it. I'm not so sure that the first step of this isn't to remove the current problem, the current joint jurisdictional agreement. Let's look at the problems, what's gone wrong with it, and let's rewrite one. And please, as part of that, you make any zoning changes, would you please notify the owners? I would really appreciate that. So I'm sorry if that went on too long, but it's just unbelievable what I've had to go through these last 3 months and what I'm gonna have to continue to go through. I have a few, at the beginning of this, or during the summer, I probably had a good 12 leads, some various businesses we could try, some people wanted to maybe lease part of our track, or some of our businesses, or flat out wanted to buy us. I'm maybe down to about 2 left. I lost 2 significant business opportunities within the last couple weeks. I don't think I'll get those back. And if I have a timeline of 3 to 6 months, I'm pretty sure I won't. I've been afraid to talk to the other 2 because I have to explain to them this ridiculous situation. And I'll probably lose those 2. And I don't even know how I generate any new leads. Because I don't know my zoning situation. Well, I know what my zoning situation is. I'm kind of screwed. So those are my comments. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
listening to 'em.
Thanks a lot, Kevin.
You guys got any other questions for us?
I don't think I don't at this time.
I think we just have work to do.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much.
You bet.
I don't want to understate or my appreciation for how hard you guys have worked or tried to fix this problem.
Yep.
Any other visitors to be heard?
Thank you, gentlemen.
Hearing none. Point of dispensing contract renewal. I don't see a spot on here to sign, Carrie.
There should be a signature spot. Unless I didn't give you that page, I have the packet here.
Yeah, there's a page here that for signatures. Yeah, so I'll
have
move
that page.
approval.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Hi.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Community health nurse contract renewal.
Move to renew.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Hi.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Anybody have anything else?
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Opposed, same sign. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks.
So you have a signature page of everything?